because I didn't grow up knowing much about the royal family. It wasn't something that was part of conversation at home. It wasn't something that we followed. My mom even said to me a couple months ago, she said, did Diana ever do an interview? She said, did Diana ever do an interview?
Girl, stop lying. We know you're lying. You have the Duper Delight smile all over your face. Okay, guys, let's talk about this. But before we begin, here's the intro. Welcome to Revealing the Narc. Join me as I highlight narcissistic traits in celebrities and public figures. Everything here is in my opinion and not professional advice. If you enjoy the analysis, please like and subscribe. You guys, that Oprah interview, I mean, we all know it was ridiculous, but there's so many moments that we have, I definitely have forgotten. This clip that I showed you at the beginning of this video is one of the very first moments. Preceding this moment, Oprah asks Meghan two questions. The first is, Meghan, were you paid anything for this interview? To which Meghan responded, no. The second is, when you marry someone, you marry their family. Did you not know about the royal family? And this was Meghan's response. This is important because it's setting the stage for the rest of the interview. Oh, there was one other thing that was said during the interview, and that was that Meghan was not told what questions were going to be asked and that anything was fair game. So right early in the beginning of this interview, she's setting the stage for her narrative. She tells us she didn't know anything about the royals, but we know that's not the truth. We know her mom never asked if Diana ever did an interview, but her purpose for saying this lie is so strategic, and there's a couple of reasons why I believe she said this lie. So I'm curious to know if you have any thoughts about why she made this statement, so feel free to drop those in the comments. I think the first time that I heard Meghan say she didn't know anything about the royal family was during the engagement interview, where she says, I didn't know anything about him, and anything I learned about him, I learned through him or from him. Meghan and I are about the same age, and when you would walk into a grocery store, the tabloids were full of their faces. There's no way she didn't know about them. Also, how does someone who studied, international studies, not know about the royal family? She claims she never Googled Harry when she's constantly on the internet looking at the things the press are saying about her. Nobody buys it. You know, it's funny because Hillary Baldwin, Alec Baldwin's wife, made a similar fable up, and I'm going to show you that clip right now. Here it is.
And you didn't have a TV.
I never
apparently.
had a TV.
Which is probably why Alec likes you, because you didn't know anything about the show.
But I did see Working Girl.
It was really refreshing because given that I didn't know a lot about him, everything that I've learned about him, I learned through him, as opposed to having grown up around different news stories or tabloids or whatever else. Anything I learned about him and his family was what he would share with me.
Do these people all read from the same rule book? I don't know. So why does she do this? It frames her as naive, detached from royal culture, and unprepared. And it's a narrative that immediately is trying to build sympathy with the audience. It's not just a casual backstory, it's her character development. She's building this image of someone who's innocent, someone who didn't chase power, didn't crave status, just a girl who fell in love. Meghan really, really plays into this fairy tale story. So in her mind, and anyone who believes her, and anyone who's clueless, then everything that happened to her in the royal family seems unfair, and it removes accountability and turns the system into the villain and Meghan into the victim. So after laying this groundwork of innocence, she casually drops this line about how her mom asked her, did Diana ever do an interview? It seems like a harmless detail, maybe sweet, but let's pause. Diana's panorama interview is one of the most iconic media moments in modern history. For someone Meghan's age or Doria's age would know about it, in my opinion. So what's really happening here? I think this line serves two purposes. It enforces Meghan's image of not being a royal fangirl that even her mother didn't know. And it creates this subtle association between herself and Diana. This is calculated innocence. It's a 2-for-1 special. I'm not scheming, I'm clueless. And right after delivering that line, Meghan smiles. It's not big, but it's there. In fact, as she's saying this whole story, she's fighting back a smile through all of it. But at the end, she can't contain herself, and you see that smile. This smile is what behavioral psychologists call Duper Delight. It's a micro expression, a tiny involuntary smirk that shows up when someone believes they've successfully deceived or manipulated somebody else. This isn't the smile of someone reminiscing about a cute conversation with her mom. It's the smile of someone who knows she delivered the perfect line or believes that she did. This line defends her against claims of manipulation. It aligns her with Diana's legacy, and it builds emotional momentum for the rest of the interview. And she did this all in one sentence. And let's be honest, did Doria actually ask this question? You tell me what you think, but I think it's highly unlikely. The idea that a woman in her 60s who lived through Diana's era saw that interview dominate headlines and wouldn't know Diana gave an interview? Come on. This is scripted, inserted, engineered. That line gives Meghan what she needs, a witness to her claimed ignorance. This isn't an isolated moment either. Meghan constantly aligns herself with Princess Diana through her wardrobe choices, through some of the phrases that she uses, her posing style in interviews. In my opinion, specifically for this interview, Meghan is using Diana as the blueprint. Meghan's grandiosity makes her believe that this interview that she's giving Oprah is going to be as consequential, is that the right word? As influential, maybe, as Diana's panorama interview. She's trying to be seen as the modern day Diana, and I'll take it a step further. She really wants to be seen as the modern day Diana, Diana 2.0. I think it's in a book about how she wanted to continue or finish Diana's causes, but she wanted to do it on a part-time basis. She couldn't even commit to it full-time. And I mean, think about the arrogance of that statement, that she wants to do what Diana did. She wants to continue that legacy, but she doesn't need to do it full-time. She can do it part-time and get it done. Again, another moment that shows her grandiosity. Just recently, Meghan was on Drew Barrymore's show, and there was a moment where Drew showed Meghan an image of herself as a child, meaning Drew as a child, meeting Princess Diana. Meghan's reaction was just so strange. I actually made a video about this, and I'm going to link that in the description box. As I was doing the research for that video, I used to think Meghan just really admires Diana. But after doing all my research and really putting my thoughts together, I changed my mind about that. She doesn't admire Diana. She admires the admiration that Diana has. She's envious of Diana. She wants people to love her as much as or even more than they loved Diana. And this is true for anyone that Meghan is emulating. We know she's copied Emma Watson, Julia Roberts, Angelina Jolie. This is not done out of admiration. She just wants this public love. So let's expand on this grandiosity. In narcissistic dynamics, grandiosity isn't always loud. Sometimes it's cloaked in victimhood, and Meghan's desire to subtly but repeatedly align herself with Diana shows her deep need for symbolic power runs. She wants the reverence, the emotional validation, and historic importance, but she doesn't want to earn it in the same way. Just like I was saying, she wanted to do it part-time. Narcissistic grandiosity could look like someone who believes that their story is iconic and even mythic. They obsess over the legacy and how they'll be remembered. They reposition themselves in history as more important than their actions justify. And they strategically align themselves with powerful symbols. And in this case, Meghan is doing that with Princess Diana. Meghan doesn't just want to be understood, she wants to be legendary. And when someone has narcissistic traits, legendary isn't just desirable, they're entitled to it. Going back to this thing about having or believing that your story is iconic, think about how she describes her and Harry's romance. She doesn't just position herself as Diana 2.0, she wraps her relationship with Harry in the language of a fairy tale. It's not just love, it's destiny. It's not just the marriage, it's a saga. She leans into that regular girl falls in love with a prince. When she says things like, I didn't know who he was, we just connected over roast chicken, it was love at first sight. This version of events, it's not just romantic, it's mythic, and that's the key. I've actually noticed this with other narcissists in my life that they love the fairy tale theme or frame of a story. And why? Why do they do this? The first is that it creates emotional inflation. A narcissist doesn't want an ordinary life, they want a legendary one. So when they fall in love, it's not, I like you, it's, you're my soulmate, my twin flame, my once in a lifetime. The relationship becomes a performance. And you are supposed to believe the story more than the reality. In Megan's case, love wasn't enough. It had to be a fairy tale because fairy tales create heroes, victims, and villains. It protects their ego to make this fairy tale. If things go wrong, it's not the narcissist made bad choices, it's because the fairy tale was ruined. The institution, the media, the family, these are the things that became the evil queen or the curse. When you cast yourself as an innocent princess, and of course I'm using that as a metaphor, then anyone who challenges you becomes a part of the opposition. Narcissists love this framing because it protects them from accountability. At the same time, if these are the conversations that Meghan is having with Harry, it creates this us against the world dynamic, and that's something that narcissists really lean into. I've done a video about this previously, or I've mentioned it before. If you'd like me to expand on this us against the world theme that narcissists use, let me know. Drop it in the comments. These fairy tale love stories also enchant the public. Narcissists know the power of a good love story. It sells, it disarms, and it distracts. If you're emotionally hooked on the romance, you're less likely to question the red flags. And let's be real, what's more emotionally powerful than a woman escaping a cruel palace with her Prince Charming by her side? Allegedly, and in her opinion. So this whole thing, this fairy tale story, is not about love, it's about legacy. If Meghan and Harry are a fairy tale, then they're above criticism, they're above scandal. Because fairy tales aren't meant to be dissected, they're meant to be believed. This isn't just a love story, it's another example of a scripted narrative with emotional armor, and that's what narcissists do best. They build the story first and they live it second. Let's do a quick comparison of Princess Diana's panorama interview in 1995 and Meghan and Harry's Oprah interview in 2021. Princess Diana's interview had an impact that was historic, game-changing, and institution-shaking. It sent out a global shockwave. Her confession of infidelity, her confession of, I don't know how to say this phrase without it being flagged, but her eating habits, I want to say, and her isolation with that very famous statement, there were 3 of us in this marriage, was unprecedented from a royal. There were direct consequences of this interview. Queen Elizabeth ordered Charles and Diana to finalize their divorce soon after. Diana became the tragic heroine in the eyes of millions, sympathetic, strong, and betrayed. Of course, public perception at the time would ebb and flow, right? So at the time, though, right after this interview, I think public perception shifted in her favor. This interview also has a lasting legacy. It's still studied in media, psychology, and political science for how it changed monarchy-press dynamics. Many say that this was the moment Diana became a global icon of vulnerability and independence. It had both emotional and political consequences. I want to mention that the journalist involved in this interview is shady. He tricked Diana and used fake documents and manipulation to gain her trust and secure the interview. He falsified bank statements, he played into her paranoia, and he gained her trust through deceit. In 2021, an investigation concluded that Bashir acted deceitfully, and the BBC covered it up for years. Prince William publicly condemned the BBC, saying the interview contributed significantly to his parents' worsening relationship and caused lasting drama. Diana didn't give that interview to build a brand. Let me repeat that. Diana didn't give that interview to build a brand. She gave it because she believed she had no safe space left. Her words came from pain, desperation, and the belief that she was being hunted, even by those closest to her. Now let's bring this back to Meghan. No one faked documents to secure her interview. Oprah didn't manipulate her into telling the truth, and Meghan wasn't tricked. She was in control. Diana was deceived into giving that interview while Meghan engineered hers. That's the difference between trauma speaking and a narrative being sold. Now let's talk about Meghan and Harry's interview with Oprah. It was controversial, culturally polarizing, and media dominating. There were allegations of racism within the royal institution, which was one of the biggest bombshells, and the irony of all of this. So these allegations were made. Harry later had an ITV interview, I think it was, and I can't remember that journalist's name, but it's the same journalist that asked if Meghan was okay in South Africa, I think it was. And Harry said, nobody said that they're racist. I didn't say that. Meghan didn't say that. The press made that up. And if I'm not mistaken, in January 2023, Harry and Meghan accepted an award for fighting structural racism within the royal family. So which is it? Well, we know which one it is. Getting back to this interview. In the US, many saw Meghan as brave, but in the UK, public and press reactions were more skeptical and divided. Meghan and Harry solidified themselves as outsiders, but it also triggered a wave of backlash and deepened their public polarization. The interview dominated headlines for weeks and gave birth to a new public discourse around narcissism, PR manipulation, and performative victimhood. This interview changed the public's perception of Meghan forever, but not in one direction. It was divisive. Some saw her as a victim, and others saw her trying to build a brand. Diana's interview had clear historical outcomes. Meghan's interview, while bold and headline grabbing, has had a mixed legacy. It sparked conversation, but also skepticism, parody, and long-term reputational damage. This actually leads me to a very obvious question. Why can't we watch this interview now? Harry and Meghan's interview now. And I did some research on it. So the interview was a CBS exclusive. It originally aired on March 7, 2021. CBS had the exclusive distribution rights, and it aired it only once and briefly online. They posted short clips afterward, but not the full 85-minute special. The rights to the interview were licensed and not owned by Oprah's company, Harpo Productions, and CBS only had temporary airing rights. So once that licensing expired, CBS had to pull it offline. So why would Oprah not license it again? We all know the answer to this, right? Oprah's brand, whether we believe it or not, and I know where most of us stand, is built on integrity, emotional truth, and legacy storytelling. The story has not aged well. The public narrative has shifted. Many have found inconsistencies. Many of the claims, I mean, what's another word for inconsistencies, guys? We all know. Lies. They were lies. And Meghan has just become an even more polarizing figure. As time goes on, the dislike for her grows. So maybe withholding the interview and not letting people see it is powerful in that people can't scrutinize it anymore, and preservation of this myth. It protects Oprah, CBS, Meghan, and Harry from scrutiny. If you know the story isn't aging well, why would you re-air it? That's not protecting the truth, it's protecting the brand. Well, everyone, I'm going to end the video here. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you'll know every time I drop a new video. I want to thank you all so much for listening, and I will talk to you all soon. Bye, everybody.